a devil-haunted village linked to us by a cursed passage. Why and how? Find out in our story. This is the story of the Tunnel of Death. To understand the real horror of this place, we must go back in time. We must go back hundreds of years to the past, to the Edo era in Japan. It is a period that extended from the 17th century until the 19th century, a period known for the strict system and the isolation that the shogun imposed on all of Japan. And the shogun is a man who possessed the political and military authority in Japanese society with a grip of iron. Japan was classes, a social ladder that cannot be changed, and the law was applied with cruelty and brutality, where heads were cut off for the most trivial reasons. In this dark time, the legend says that a group of people became outcasts, and the reason differs according to the narration, for some say that they were merely poor farmers who fled from the harsh taxes that the local ruler imposed on them, so they fled, so they would not die of hunger, they and their families, after they ate grass and insects from the severity of poverty. And there is another darker narration that says that they were not farmers, but were from the Burakumin class, and it means the class of outcasts. And they are a group of people who were working in vile professions like tanning leathers or executing death sentences and burying the dead, so the smell of death was wafting from their bodies always. Persons who were looked at as being non-human, a type of humans not to be touched as if they were an epidemic. And there is a simpler and most terrifying narration that they were merely criminals, killers, or thieves who fled from justice to live according to their special laws, which are governed by killing and criminality. Whatever the origin of these people, they left the Japanese society and ascended to the mountains searching for a refuge. They searched for a place the eyes of the shogun cannot reach, and indeed they found it. A secret deep valley hidden behind the dense trees and the rocky slopes. A place easy to defend and difficult to reach, as if it is a mouth of a monster swallowing whoever enters it. There they built their huts from the damp and rotten wood, and they planted their food and started their new life, their life which was completely isolated from the world. And they launched on this place the name Inunaki, meaning the Howling Dog Village. Because their dogs were barking madly every night at things humans do not see. In the beginning, perhaps the matter was related to freedom, liberation from taxes and classism and the law, but isolation is a sword with two edges, especially when it continues for 200 years. Imagine with me, you were born in this gloomy village. You did not see in your life any human except the 30 or 40 persons who live with you. You did not see any other city other than this depressing valley. You did not see anything of the outside world other than it. The first generation of this group were remembering the outside world and fearing it. As for the second generation, it heard stories about the outside world and hated it without seeing it. As for the third generation, it no longer believed that there is an outside world originally. And And here the real and social horror began, when a very small human group formed and closed on itself. Scientifically, there is something dangerous happening to the offspring and the blood when they do not renew for continuous generations, but they are the ones who were preventing any new blood entering to Inunaki, their special world. The legends whispered about them, the ugliest taboos: incest. The matter was not merely an incident or a sin, but it became the law followed by them. It is the only way to continue. The brothers marry their sisters, and the fathers begot from their daughters. The blood did not renew generation after generation until it spoiled and rotted. And this corruption was not physical only. It was not merely twisted limbs or deformed faces and bulging eyes, but it was a corruption in the mind also. Madness began spreading in the village like fire in the hay. Their minds became narrow and closed completely like their village. And with madness came violence and pathological fear of anything strange, for the stranger is the biggest threat to them. The stories that leaked from the neighboring villages were horrifying. They tell about merchants who lost their way in the mountains and saw smoke coming out of the valley. And when they approached searching for food or shelter, no one saw them ever afterwards, as if the earth split and swallowed them. They tell about sounds heard in the clear nights, sounds of strange drums and screams, not resembling the screams of humans, as if it is celebrations and bloody rituals. It is said that the inhabitants of Inunaki put one law for their village: any stranger treading with his foot their land is killed. Without any mercy they are killed with axes and sickles, and any tool falling in their hands. It is said that they were mutilating the corpses and hanging them on the trees as a warning to any other person who might think of approaching to their village. Isolation turned these farmers or outcasts into monsters, monsters not knowing anything except blood and fear and human flesh. And this situation continued for hundreds of years. Then suddenly in the early 20th century, with the beginning of the Meiji era, the era of modernization in Japan, the village disappeared. Here the mystery became, raising the horror of everyone who hears it. How does a complete village disappear? The first theory believes that they eliminated themselves with incest, and madness and violence ate them from the inside, or they died because of a lethal hereditary disease they could not cure. The village was abandoned and left to rot in the mountains, with their corpses thrown in the open. But there is a theory that makes the blood freeze in the veins, saying that the new Japanese government, in its seeking to build a modern and strong and clean state, found that the existence of a village like Inunaki Village in the mountains of Fukuoka is considered a disgrace to Japan entirely. The existence of people living outside the law and practicing incest and killing strangers and eating their flesh like those were not acceptable in the new Japan. So what did they do then to eliminate them? There is a narration saying that they sent a military force in a dark night and encircled the village and exterminated everyone in it, from men and women and children. A massacre happened in silence. Its goal is ethnic cleansing, to hide this sick part of the history of Japan. And after the village was cleaned, it was necessary to hide the crime. And here comes the role of maps. Orders were issued to erase Inunaki Village from all the official records. It was wiped from the topographical maps, and it was deleted also from the records of residents, as if it was not existing from the basis. The village disappeared, but what about the souls that were killed there? It is said that the sign which was put on the first of Fukuoka Tunnel, and which says the Japanese constitutional law does not apply here, was not the sign from the making of the villagers, but was a warning from the government itself, saying that what happened here was out of the law, and what you might find here if you entered still is out of our control and out of the borders of the world of humans. The sounds that are heard in Inunaki Tunnel and the shadows that move in the darkness are not all from the making of ancient legends, for in the modern era, this place gained a new curse, a real curse, and documented in the police records, a curse written with blood and fire. Let us go back in history to the 13th of December, year 1988. A very cold night will become one of the darkest nights in the history of Fukuoka Prefecture. The victim was a young man reaching of age 20 years. His name is Koichi Umezu. Koichi was not from the inhabitants of the legendary village and was not an explorer searching for ghosts. He was just a normal young man, found himself in the wrong place and in the worst time can be imagined. In that night, Koichi was driving his car when blocked his way a group of 5 young men. The 5 young men wanted to steal his car, but Koichi resisted them and refused conceding it. This simple resistance angered them and turned the failed theft operation into a fit of rage cannot be controlled. The 5 decided to discipline Koichi, so they kidnapped him and forced him to ride with them and drove their car not to any place, but they drove him intentionally towards the old Inunaki Tunnel, the ideal place to commit a crime in the darkness. And there beside the entrance, blocked with concrete blocks, the real nightmare for Koichi started. They tied him and rained on him with severe beating and used all what is in them of cruelty while he was screaming and begging in a place no one can hear in it, his scream except the spirits that inhabit this tunnel indeed. But the beating was not enough to satisfy their brutality. They arrived to the highest point of savagery. They took their decision that they will not let him leave ever. They brought a gallon of gasoline they were keeping in their car and poured it with cold blood on the body of Koichi while he is still alive, breathing and pleading. Then they lit the fire. The sound of the ignition of the fire echoed for moments inside the stone walls of the tunnel to mix with the sound of his last scream. All this happened at the entrance of Inunaki Tunnel. Of course, the crime was uglier than to be hidden. The 5 perpetrators were arrested and confessed to their horrific deed and were sentenced. But the trace that this crime left was deeper than merely a case in the court. This crime has cursed the place eternally. After this incident, no one dared to approach the tunnel even in the clear day. The police itself described the place as being hair-raising, and the press linked immediately between the hideous crime and between the tales that were told about the cursed village. Now, when people speak about hearing screams from inside the tunnel, these are no longer the screams of the villagers who lived 200 years ago, but they are the real and painful screams of the young man Koichi while he is being burned alive. There exists another old story about the village, that simple farmers and normal families were living in this land since years. They inherited their homes and their lands from their ancestors. Their whole life was linked to this valley. Came to them a governmental notice that everyone must leave. The village will be evacuated completely because this whole valley will drown under the water. Because the Japanese government decided to look at the area of Inunaki Mountains as it is not a cursed place but as a natural resource. The government decided that the time has come to exploit this rugged area in a project that was huge, building Inunaki Dam, and it is a giant dam that will create a huge artificial lake to supply the nearby cities with clean water and generate electricity. It was a wonderful engineering plan. But there was one small problem standing in the way of this project. In the heart of the valley, which is supposed to be covered by water, was situated the real Inunaki Village. So, of course, the residents refused and protested and said, "This is our land and these are our houses, but the most important of all, that these are our graves. For in the Japanese culture, respect of ancestors and graves is a holy thing, cannot be touched. But the decision of the government was final. The residents were forced to leave. They forced them to pack their luggage and leave everything behind them. And indeed, the construction works of the dam started. And when it completed, the gates were closed and the water started rising very slowly and creeping towards the abandoned village. The water covered the fields first, then reached to the thresholds of the wooden homes, then started devouring the houses one after the other until the village disappeared completely. But the ugliest thing is what happened to the cemetery of the village, and the water covered it too. To this day, the real Inunaki Village entirely still exists at the bottom of the lake of Inunaki Dam. The rotting houses and the forgotten furniture and the stone tombstones all lie in silence under millions of tons of water, and this is what created a completely new layer of horror. The people of the village who were forced to leave, is their anger and their sadness and their curse the one controlling the place now. The fishermen tell about seeing strange shapes moving under the surface of the water, exactly above the place where the drowned village was. They talk about hearing strange sounds coming from the depths. And the story most raising for goosebumps is seeing human specters coming out of the lake, as if they are the residents of the drowned village returned to search for their homes, or maybe returned to warn the strangers that this place still belongs to them. Inunaki is not merely a ghost story we tell, for Inunaki Village was that land which seized upon it in the past madness and incest, which led to minds afflicted with madness and deformed genes, and the least trait in it is bloody violence.
Thank you for following, and don't forget to subscribe, activate the bell, and share your opinions.